I was personally over the moon when Nigel Farage took over Reform, because as you all know, I'm not a fan of Richard Tice. And I know nobody of interest or importance watches my videos because after all I am just a YouTube nobody with a tiny channel. But still, I do like to give these opinions and suggestions because you never know, they might hit home with one of them. Anyway, my latest suggestion is this. And before I carry on, I'm giving these suggestions because I'm all in with Reform now. Having Nigel Farage take over and stand as a candidate was the shot in the arm that the party needed desperately. And it's done them wonders in the polls as well, because according to the YouGov poll today, they've overtaken the Conservatives. That's how much of a positive impact Nigel Farage's presence has made. But back to my latest suggestion, and it's this. And if anyone from Reform is watching, then for the love of God, have a word in Nigel Farage's shell and tell him, get rid of Charlie Mullins. That guy will drag Reform into the toilet and take away some credibility. And he's not something we really need right now. In fact, if ever, this guy was a staunch Remoaner. He was against Brexit in all its forms and said some derogatory stuff about Brexiteers as well. But worse than that, he was a cruel and aggressive advocate of lockdown and the jab. Now, I know that this particular issue is one of the things that is quite distinctive when it comes to Reform voters. We were all sceptical of lockdown and the jab, and evidently we have been proven right. We were absolutely right to question it. So having someone like Charlie Mullins or the pound shop Rod Stewart being involved in Reform, I think is a big, big mistake. We remember what he said. He wanted people who hadn't taken the jab excluded from society. He said they shouldn't be allowed to walk the streets, they shouldn't be allowed to work, they shouldn't be allowed access to healthcare, everything basically. People like Charlie Mullins should never be forgotten. And looking to the reaction to this on social media, on X in particular, I think the Reform Party and Nigel Farage, they really should take heed. The guy is toxic. And people are saying they won't join unless he's gone, so do the right thing, Nigel. It is important, it is so vital that we have representatives in Reform who represent us and our values, and the lockdown and the jab isn't one of them. And that's the thing with Dr. David Bull and Richard Tice. They both advocated for the jab as well. And then there's the Ukraine. I'd say the majority of Reform voters, we don't support the war in Ukraine, and we definitely don't support funding it. And yet Richard Tice joined a convoy and drove over there with medical supplies for their army. I mean, my goodness, talking about being out of touch with your core voters. But this Charlie Mullins fella, he is definitely out of touch. He is toxic, and I don't think he can represent any of us in a meaningful and substantial way. And for some people, in fact, for many people on social media, this guy is a massive red flag. So Nigel and anyone in Reform, if you're watching, if you're listening, then please get rid of Shitrod, because we don't want him. The things he said weren't some tiny, inexcusable anecdotes. The guy was an advocate for total ignorance. And there we go, that's my opinion. I'm Paz49, thanks for listening, and until the next time, Roger Trout.